Hi, today we're going to talk about lights. Oh boy. So I thought, oh, I'll do a review of the 600D, and then I realized everybody and their dog does reviews of every Aputure light out there. So I thought, oh, I have the 600D, the 120, and the 300. I kind of wanted to just do something for myself and then put it out there on the internet for everyone else as well. So I decided to do some tests with each of these lights. Not anything scientific, nothing like super spec driven, just how I would use them in scenarios and just see what it looked like. So I have a couple different shots that I'll go through in each one. I have an interior day, I have an exterior day, I have an exterior night, just to kind of give some variety of like what each one of these is doing. Another test that I did was also a probe lens test where I shot with the probe lens to kind of show the difference between these lights when you're doing some macro probe lens stuff, because I know a lot of people do that type of stuff. And I noticed when I'm doing that stuff, never having quite enough light, especially if you're doing probe lens and slow-mo. You got to bump that ISO way up, or you got to bring in the bigger guy. Typically with a lot of the slow-mo stuff that I do, I've done M18s, area M18s for those. So that's what that is anyway. So one of the interesting things that I found was each one of these lights is about a stop difference from each other. So 2 times the amount of light. So you have the 120D to the 300D, 2 times the amount of light, 300D to 600D, about 2 times the amount of light. Which would make sense since this is 100, 300, you know, almost 150, 300, and then 600. So they're all kind of pretty comparable. Okay, so I wanted to show a final setup. So I got my camera here, light here with a quarter grid, and I'm just bouncing into this white backdrop. Holy cow, it's so bright. And this is the 600D full power, so I'm bouncing off this light through this diffusion, hence a book light because the light's in the middle of a book. And then I use this 4x, I should have one more to really block off the light well, to kind of block off the light back here so it doesn't spill out too much. The 120D versus the 300D versus the 600D. And it's interesting to see actually a little bit of a color shift in the 600D versus the 300 and the 120. I'm not sure exactly why. It might be that those 2 lights are a little older or something. I don't know. But here's with a color correction just kind of thrown on. It was just a quick lot. You can see kind of how bright it actually is. So yeah, it just this kind of gave me a baseline of what the light looked like in terms of in a studio setting and things like that. So let's jump over to the daytime now. As you can see on the wall, look at the wall, we are getting quite a bit of reflection off that, which is giving kind of a nice smooth look on our face right now. So we're just gonna use that and accentuate it and try to match the light of the background with the light of the foregrounds, because we got a bright sky, we got a bright sunny day. So now we're on the 300D with the light dome right here, pretty close to the subject, right out of camera. We're gonna film it and see how this one looks. I wish I had done this a little differently. I did open up and expose properly for her face in the natural light. So I think it's a 2.8, while all the rest of them are at a 4. You can see the change in the aperture and the light. So I wish I had just kind of kept it with the background, exposing for the background rather than her face on the natural one, but I didn't, so that's that. Anyway, so you have the natural, and then you see what the 120D can do, shooting through an octodome onto her face, and then the 300D. And it's interesting because the 300D just brings up that face just enough that I felt like it was actually more usable, and it actually kind of shaped the face a little bit better. And then the 600D just did a fantastic job. This was at 100%. I feel like you could actually dim this down just a little bit to make it feel a little more natural. Maybe dim it down to like 70% instead of the full 100. Right now it just kind of feels like there's a light lighting her a little bit, rather than with the 300D it felt a little more natural. I don't like things to look too sourcey. I like it to feel more natural. I felt like with the 300D it felt a little more natural, but with the 120D it felt a little too dark on her face. But the 300D was a nice sweet spot. But again, I'm not dealing with a crazy bright background, so it is what it is. So then let's jump inside. I did a shot inside where I shot through a window. I put some fog in the room. I kind of wish I hadn't done the fog because it was hard to keep the atmosphere consistent in terms of the fog. Here's the natural look with the light coming through the back window, kind of trying to expose for that light in the back. As you can see, I'm very dark. And then we jump over to the 120D and you get a little bit more light on my face. It's looking a little nicer. And then the 300D, as you can see, of course, it brings up that light a little bit more. But then I felt like where the 600D really shined was in this moment. I felt like this felt a lot more natural. My face was so much better. It just brought it up just enough that I felt like it was really usable and looked quite nice. So I was very impressed. Felt like the 300D still didn't feel quite bright enough. It was getting there, but still didn't feel like I could expose as well as I would like to. But with the 600, I felt like I got it up to where I wanted it to be. So here's another test that I'm doing. This one is an outdoor test at night. So I have my lovely pile of lights here, 100D, 120, the 600, and up there's the 300 with the lantern. And all I'm doing is a really super simple setup. One light, and I'm just trying to light up this whole area over here and see kind of if one light can give you enough, you know, to make it feel like a nighttime scene. Obviously, it's probably not the best position for the light. It's just where the closest outlet was. And I was in a rush and didn't have time to set up a lot of extension cords. So I set it over there. Yeah, so I have two versions for the outside. One where I changed the exposure each time, and then one where I kept the exposure the same throughout the lights. So for the one where I changed the exposure, you can see really where I was looking was on the back at these porch lights. You can see as you go through each one. So at the 120D at 2.8, those lights are pretty blown out back there. Everything's really soft because I had to open up to a 2.8. Versus the 300D, the lights are starting to get a little bit more detail back in those lights. And then 600D, you have full detail of those lights. They're not overly blooming or blowing out or clipping. Which is like, it's a small detail, but it's kind of nice to know, like, if you're trying to expose a little bit more. And then you can kind of see them all side by side here. And I did notice that the 600D did have a little bit more magenta, while the other two, the 120D and the 300D, both had a little bit more of a green hue to them. But then here it is with the 5.6 to kind of see the difference between the three. As you can tell, the 120D is quite dark compared to the 600D with the proper exposure. And again, you can see on the background, the lights are properly exposed back there, not clipping on those porch lights on all three. However, with the 120D, you're losing basically all the information back on that house behind you. And then the last one I did was just a quick one. I did a probe lens test. If each light was at 100%, no diffusion on it, just shining directly onto the subject. And you can kind of see the differences between the three in terms of the depth of field. It's nice when you're doing those macro shots to really have the option to have that greater depth of field. I think that's what makes the probe lens kind of a neat lens, is to be able to stop all the way down. When people talk about like, oh, I don't know if I need that much light. Yes, you need that much light. It just opens up so many more options for you. You can dim it down, but it's hard. You can't dim a 120D up. So I find it far more beneficial to have more light and being able to dim it down than not have enough light. All in all, I'm impressed with the 600D. It's bright, it is, but it's not as insanely bright as everyone says. And like, oh, why would you need this much brightness? Are you kidding? I want twice as bright as that. I want 6 times as bright as that. The brighter it is, the more you can bounce it and diffuse it. I say the 600D is definitely worth it. I mean, it's a cheap light relative to other things on the market like it. And gives you a great amount of power. It's pretty close to an 800 Joker. It's pretty close. I would like to. I want to get my hands on an 800 Joker again, but when I was using it, and I've used the 800 Joker quite a bit, it felt like about the intensity of an 800 Joker. Maybe not quite, but it was pretty close. So it has a decent intensity. Also the 600D, the other thing everyone talked about is how heavy it is. It's super light. Like, I do not feel like this is that heavy. Is it heavier than the other two? Yeah, of course. It's got like twice the power. I mean, the ballast is pretty hefty. This guy here, this guy here, got some decent heft to it. Even with it all together, carrying it around, it's not that heavy. It's heavy. I'd put it on a little bit beefier stand. I don't know if I would necessarily trust it as much on one of these light stands as compared to like a baby stand or a C stand or something. So I typically put it on a C stand or a baby stand. And then the 300D, yeah, you know, it's a little it's heavier, but it's not. I wouldn't say, whoa, that sucker's heavy. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys liked the tests. This was something that I just decided to do. I wanted to see these tests for myself and just kind of play with the lights, get familiar with them, see how the 600D compared to the other ones, what scenarios maybe the 600D is too much power and a 300D is going to be able to handle it. Because it is a little bit heavier and needs a bit heavier stand. So if you can use the 300D, why not? Why add more weight and complication to something when this does the job? However, why not have more power? You know, I can always dim this sucker way down. I can't really dim this up to this power, but I can definitely dim this down to that power. So, seems like a better choice to me. Hope this was helpful. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to this channel and tell your friends and their friends to watch and like this content, I guess. Anyway, thanks again. Thanks for watching.